It is 11:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. You are lying in bed. The room is dark, and the blue light of your phone is illuminating your face. You aren't checking emails. You aren't texting a friend. You are scrolling through a real estate app. You are looking at a three-bedroom house with a small yard, maybe a porch. It is nice, but it isn't a mansion. It's modest. You look at the price tag. Then you scroll down to the estimated monthly payment, MAT. You feel a sharp, physical tightness in your chest. The number is double what you pay in rent. It is mathematically impossible for you to afford this house without winning the lottery or robbing a bank. You know this. You knew it before you opened the app. Yet, you keep scrolling. You look at the kitchen. You imagine where your couch would go. You torture yourself with a future that feels like it is slipping through your fingers like sand. Then you close the app. You open Instagram or TikTok. You see a video of someone unboxing a $300 blender or showing off a haul of new clothes. Without thinking, you switch apps again, this time to Amazon or a food delivery service. You order something small, a book, a gadget, a late-night snack. It costs $25. You feel a tiny fleeting spark of relief. This sequence, from the crushing despair of the housing market to the impulsive purchase of a small luxury, is not a contradiction. It is not a sign that you are bad with money. It is a predictable, biological response to a trapped environment. You are caught in a psychological loop that economists and psychologists are only just beginning to understand. You are experiencing the grief of a dream that died before you ever had the chance to live it. But the real trap is that you think this is a financial problem, when in reality, it is an identity crisis fueled by a brain that is desperate for control. Let's look at the first mechanism at play here. It is called learned helplessness, but in the context of modern finance, we call it doom spending. Imagine you are standing in front of a mountain. Your goal is to climb it, but every time you take a step forward, the mountain grows 10 feet taller. After a year of walking, you realize you are actually further away from the summit than when you started. What does your brain do? A rational brain stops walking. It realizes the goal is impossible. It looks for a place to sit down, maybe build a small fire, and make the current moment comfortable. This is exactly what is happening with the housing market. For decades, the deal was simple. Sacrifice now, save your money, and in 5 years, you buy a house. That was the mountain. But today, housing prices are rising faster than you can possibly save. The goalpost isn't just moving, it is sprinting away from you. When the human brain realizes that a long-term reward is statistically impossible to achieve, it stops releasing dopamine for long-term planning. It switches gears. It starts prioritizing short-term dopamine. This is why you buy the expensive coffee. This is why you lease the nice car. This is why you book the weekend trip. You aren't being irresponsible. You are unconsciously calculating that the $20,000 you could save in 5 years still won't be enough for a down payment. So you might as well enjoy the $20 you have today. You are medicating the pain of a hopeless future with the pleasure of a tangible present. It is a survival mechanism. Your brain is trying to protect you from the despair of working for a reward that will never come. Here is what most people miss about this dynamic. Society gaslights you for this behavior. You hear the older generation, people who bought houses when they cost twice the average salary, telling you that if you just stopped buying avocado toast, you'd be a homeowner. This creates a deep, corrosive sense of shame. You start to believe them. You look at your bank account and think, if only I had more discipline. But math doesn't care about your discipline. The median home price has risen 4 times faster than the median income since the 1960s. You are playing a game of Monopoly, where all the properties were bought 3 rounds before you rolled the dice. But because you internalize this structural failure as a personal failure, you enter a cycle of financial self-harm. You feel guilty, so you get stressed. You get stressed, so you seek comfort. You buy something to feel comfort, which costs money. You lose money, so you feel guilty. The cycle repeats, and the house gets further away. It goes deeper than that. It touches on the very core of how we define adulthood. Let's talk about status anxiety and the renter's stigma. We have been culturally programmed to view renting as a temporary state. It is seen as a waiting room for real life. In the narrative of the American dream, and increasingly the global dream, homeownership is the graduation ceremony of adulthood. If you own, you are a responsible, successful citizen. If you rent, you are a transient, a child, someone who hasn't made it yet. This creates a psychological wound known as delayed adolescence. Even if you are 35 years old, have a career, and are raising a child, if you are living in a rented apartment with white walls you aren't allowed to paint, a part of you feels like a teenager. You feel a lack of agency. You can't drill a hole in the wall. You can't change the carpet. You are living in someone else's box. This lack of environmental control triggers high levels of background cortisol, the stress hormone. Humans have a fundamental need for territoriality. We need a space that is ours, that we can shape and defend. When that need is unmet for decades, it creates a subtle, low-grade depression. To compensate for this lack of ownership, we often fall into the trap of lifestyle inflation within the rental market. This is the mechanism where, because you can't buy a mediocre house, you rent a luxury apartment. You might think, I can't afford a mortgage, but I can afford this $2,500 a month apartment with a gym and a pool. This feels like a win. You get to live in a nice place, but psychologically it is golden handcuffs. You get used to a standard of living that you could never afford to buy. To buy a house with a pool and a gym would cost 3 times your rent. So, you become addicted to the rental lifestyle because it offers a simulacrum of wealth that ownership cannot currently provide. You are trapped in a cage, but because the cage has granite countertops, you stop trying to pick the lock. But the real trap is what happens when you actually try to fight the system. There is a behavior pattern called the sidelines paralysis. This affects the people who do have some savings, the ones who did everything right. Maybe you have $50,000 saved. You are ready, but you look at the market and it looks like a bubble. You tell yourself, I'll wait for the crash. Prices have to come down. You said this in 2020. You said it in 2022. You are saying it now. This is driven by loss aversion. Psychologically, the pain of losing money is twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining it. The fear of buying a house and seeing its value drop by 10% paralyzes you. So you wait. But while you wait, inflation eats your savings. The house that was $400,000 becomes $450,000. Your $50,000 down payment, which used to be 12%, is now 11%. You are saving money, but you are losing purchasing power. This paralysis is a form of perfectionism. You're looking for the perfect tie-e in a market that is inherently chaotic. You're trying to outsmart a system that is rigged by hedge funds and algorithms. The irony is that by trying to avoid the risk of a market dip, you guarantee the loss of inflation. You are standing on the train platform waiting for the train to stop completely so you can board safely, but the train is only speeding up. And here is the uncomfortable truth that almost no one wants to admit. You aren't just competing with other families anymore. You are competing with capital itself. Institutional investors, private equity firms, and algorithms are buying starter homes by the thousands to turn them into permanent rentals. They don't care about the school district. They don't care about the neighborhood vibe. They care about yield. When you lose a bidding war, you often internalize it. You think, I should have offered more, or I'm not good enough. But you are bringing a knife to a drone strike. This shift creates a profound sense of alienation. You feel like a stranger in your own city. You drive past neighborhoods where you grew up, and you realize you couldn't afford to buy your parents' house today. This alienation breeds cynicism. It makes you want to give up on the social contract entirely. If the game is rigged, why play by the rules? This leads to quiet quitting, not just at work, but in life. You stop striving. You stop planning for the future. You retreat into digital worlds, video games, or fandoms, places where effort actually leads to reward, places where the rules are fair and transparent, unlike the housing market. This retreat is safe, but it is lonely. It disconnects you from your community because community is built on stability, and renters are forced to be transient. So, how do we break this cycle? How do we stop the doom spending, the shame, and the paralysis? The first step is a radical reframing of what success means. You have to surgically remove your self-worth from your property deed. You have to understand that renting is not a moral failing. It is a mathematical reality for a generation that was handed a broken economy. You must stop apologizing for it. The second step is to stop waiting for the savior. The market might not crash. The government might not bail you out. The rates might not drop. Waiting for these things puts your happiness on hold. You have to find a way to live fully now within the constraints you have. This might mean investing your money elsewhere. If you can't buy a house, buy stocks, buy bonds, buy yourself freedom from debt. Do not let the inability to buy a physical asset stop you from building financial assets. The rent versus buy calculator often shows that renting and investing, the difference can actually build more wealth than owning, provided you actually invest the difference and don't spend it on coping mechanisms. You also need to reclaim your agency over your environment. Paint the rental walls and pay the fine later. Buy the nice furniture that makes you happy, even if it's in a temporary space. Create a home inside the rental. Fight the feeling of transience by putting down roots where you are, even if those roots are in a pot instead of the ground. Finally, you need to forgive yourself for the latte. You need to forgive yourself for the avocado toast. These small pleasures are not the reason you don't own a home. Structural economic shifts are the reason. Once you stop blaming yourself for the rain, you can stop standing in it and drowning in guilt. You can start building a shelter with what you have. The housing trap is real. The door is locked for many of us. But you don't have to stand in the hallway screaming and banging on the door until you die. You can turn around. You can find another room. You can build a life that is rich, meaningful, and secure, even if you don't own the roof over your head. Your worth is not measured in square footage. Your maturity is not measured by a mortgage. You are not a failure because the game changed while you were playing it. Take a deep breath. Look around your room. It is yours right now, and for tonight, that is enough.